Good afternoon and welcome to this week's edition of the People Progressing Podcast. Today, I have one of my best friends growing up, Debbie now, Redmond, and it's going to be a very powerful show, a lot to learn today. And Debbie, I just started out by asking my guests on my show to kind of tell us where you grew up, what you like to do as a kid, some of the things that you had fun doing, and some of the influences you had on your life.
Well, I grew up in Littleton, Colorado. Grew up in a large Catholic family of 8 kids. Of course, I'm the youngest of 8, had 6 brothers, 1 sister. And my family, we were all about being in the mountains, being in nature. So we went camping and hiking and jeeping all the time. My mom, we didn't have much money. So what little money my mom had, she'd rather put money towards gas and food for a picnic than taking us to the movies or McDonald's, because it was all about quality time together. So that's what we did every opportunity we got, working around, of course, playing sports and stuff, but very much a mountain family, and still are today. That's what we all love to do still today, is go camping and jeeping. And so that's kind of how I was raised. It was, very close-knit family. We all got along really great when we were kids and enjoyed each other's company. So,
And you grew up in Littleton, and that's where you and I met in high school.
Yes.
And a significant event happened in your life. I think it was our junior year? Senior year of high school. And I know this is not easy for you, but why don't you explain what happened and how it happened, and we'll kind of go from there.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, I had a brother, Ricky, who's about 5 years older than me. And the beginning of our sophomore year in high school, Ricky developed schizophrenia. He was in the Navy. They felt that he tried some drugs in high school, so they thought the pot, and of course, we do think there might have been some genes on my dad's side of the family. So the combination of both genetic and doing pot triggered the schizophrenia. At that time, he was diagnosed as acute schizophrenia, which they don't use the term acute anymore, but at that time it was considered the worst type of schizophrenia you could get. There's probably about 20 symptoms, and the doctor told us on average a schizophrenic will have between 3 to 5 symptoms, voices, hallucinations, that type of stuff. My brother Ricky had actually every single symptom plus a little more. So that's why he was diagnosed as acute and considered the worst type of schizophrenia. Doctors actually wrote reports on him when he was in the hospital because they never came across a schizophrenic so bad as him. But over a 2-year period, my parents tried everything to get him the help. He was in and out of hospital. He escaped the hospital. Police were at our house 3-4 times trying to help us. Unfortunately, we were not getting the help from the medical side of things. We had doctors that failed us. And then eventually, beginning of our senior year, Ricky decided that he started thinking that we were imposters. We weren't real. He believed we were evil and the devil because he was seeing evil spirits and monsters and all these things. And so he actually got a rifle and shot and killed my 2 brothers, Jim and Bruce. And then he tried to get into my room to kill me. But thank goodness the sirens were coming, and he heard the sirens coming. So that stopped him.
And I want to go back a little bit when you first got diagnosed. First of all, we'll introduce this. You've written a book about this to help people understand it more, and we'll get into that here in a minute. But in your book, you talked about how he was in the Navy, and you were trying to get him help through the Navy, and then he got out of the Navy, and then trying to get him help out in the real world per se was just so hard for you guys to find the right people and the right system to give him the help that he deserved and that he needed. Is that a fair statement?
Not quite.
Okay.
So he was in the Navy, and he was in the Navy for about a year, and then he started sending and writing really odd letters. And these letters were like written in black marker. There were statements like, there's a war with the devil, evil spirits everywhere, evil spirits following me, those type of comments. So my mom, they got about 5 letters in a 2-week period, and then it stopped. And so after about a week, my mom got very concerned. So she called the Navy chaplain. But of course, back then there was no internet service. So they contacted Red Cross to send a telegram to the ship to find out the status of Ricky and what was going on. And the Navy sent the telegram back stating that Ricky had been honorably discharged, no longer with them.
Oh, wow.
And of course, we sent another telegram. What happened? Where is he? They would not respond. So about a good month and a half, almost 2 months go by, we didn't know where Ricky was at. And what happened? Nothing. And then eventually he called my parents from downtown Denver at the bus station, right the day or two before Thanksgiving, to come pick him up. So of course they rushed down there to pick him up, and they were very shocked how he looked. He was, really thin, dirty, smelly. He had been living on the streets. And he told my mom he couldn't come home because the evil spirits had followed him home from Japan. And
Wow.
that's why he wouldn't come home. And so from then on is when my parents, took him to the Veterans Hospital, and in and out of there 4 times, and Denver Rocky Mountain Hospital, in and out of different hospitals and doctors trying to get him help from then on. So the Navy didn't help at all.
Yeah.
They just kicked him out.
Yeah. Yeah. And then then you tried with the Veterans Hospital and so forth, and just kept getting dead ends, didn't you?
Yeah.
Your parents kept getting dead ends with the help that they
Yeah.
needed. What
Yes.
would you say, has that changed at all now, or has that gotten better for people who have this, or do you see it kind of being the same in terms of getting help for these people?
Well, unfortunately, from the people I've talked to, other veterans, over this last year working with CIT, they're not getting the help that they need. There's so much red tape with the Veterans Hospital in getting the help that people need. So it's very frustrating. A lot of people who need help won't even go because, it's just a cluster. They can't, it takes months to even get an appointment. It takes months to get medication. So I feel bad for any veterans because they really do struggle in getting the help that they need. But I do want people to know that there are people out there that are the middleman. There are companies that work specifically with the veteran and the VA, and they take care of that red tape. They
Oh,
help
wow.
you get the appointments. They help you get all that stuff. So there are groups out there that will help you. So if you're not getting help for yourself, please contact these people because they will do it for you. And so that's kind of what I've learned the last year. That's the route to go because the Veterans Hospital is just not very good.
And was that available to you guys when Ricky was going through this, or is that something that's kind of more new?
That's something that's newer.
Okay.
That didn't exist back then.
Okay. So that's a positive.
Yes.
So that's a
Yes.
positive. And let's go back to a little bit of I've heard of this thing called drug-induced schizophrenia. Would you say that this was drug-induced schizophrenia, or was it a combination, like you said, between genes and the drugs? Or I guess the question would be, if he hadn't tried drugs, you think he would have gotten schizophrenia?
I don't. Talking to the doctor, yes, it was drugs and genes, but they said it was the drugs that triggered the genes. So like my dad's brother, he was attacked. He was waiting at a bus stop, and he was attacked. He got brain injury and it caused schizophrenia. Then it was either my dad's uncle or grandfather, I can't remember which one, was very paranoid. And so looking back, they think maybe he had schizophrenia. So that's why we think there's a gene that was
Okay.
there. But the doctors definitely said it was the pot that triggered it. And most
That
likely
triggered.
he would have not gotten schizophrenia if he did not smoke pot.
And can you go over a little bit, Deb, about how pot in teenagers from like 15 to 25 can have an adverse effect on a young person's brain?
Yes. So this is really important for anybody who has teenagers or nieces or nephews of teenagers, please talk to them about drugs. Because from what the doctor told us is in the brain, so the brain is the last organ to develop in the body, starts developing at the age of 15 and stops at the age of 25. So what they told us is there's these receptors that grow in the brain. And in between these receptors is communication, rational thought, comprehension. And so in a normal brain, the receptors are very close together like this. Well, when you are smoking pot or doing drugs as teenagers, what could happen is it stops the receptors and the growth. So that gap is further apart, which affects, once again, rational thought, comprehension. And so they have done many brain scans and tests on schizophrenics and found that those receptors are further apart than a normal brain. And so that might cause the hallucinations, voices, things like that. They're not sure. So it's very important that kids understand that if they do drugs, they're basically playing Russian roulette with their brain. Anybody could get schizophrenia. There's a misconception out there that you can only get if you inherit it, and that's absolutely not true. Just as many people get schizophrenia from drugs, environmental stress. Actually, a lot of people don't know this, but a very high stressed emotional situation can actually cause schizophrenia. So kids need to understand that they're really taking a huge risk on doing drugs because you don't know who's going to get it and who's not going to get it. Yeah, there's a lot of kids out there that smoke pot and they're fine. But then there's a lot of kids that go ahead and try it and they get schizophrenia. So the kids need to understand, is it worth one night of partying really worth a lifetime of mental illness?
Mhm.
And it's something they really need to think about. If they want to smoke pot after the age of 25, fine, because the brain's developed. But between 15 and 25, any drugs is just a high risk. And especially now, because the pot is not the same as it was back in the 70s. You know, there's now chemicals involved, which now they're finding some kids are getting more severe mental illness that possibly could be playing into because, you know, the chemicals and things that are now played into this pot. So,
Yeah, because it's stronger, right? Some of the
yeah,
strands of that is so much stronger.
yeah,
It's an amazing that you're bringing awareness of this. Now, I want to go kind of touch a little bit on you. You're an amazing human being. You had
thank you, Joe.
a very, very traumatic experience happen in your life. And you had a choice. You had a choice to kind of be bitter, which you might have been for a while, or be better and help others be better. And you chose to be better and help others be better. You wrote a book, you speak, we'll get into that. What was it in you, Deb, that made you say, I am going to make something of this to help others, to serve others, to make others' lives better? What made you do that?
You know, after Jim and Bruce died, I had so many questions as to why. Sorry. It just, you know, I had a lot of survivor's guilt. Like, why did they die and I didn't?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was struggling with that for years. Actually, you know, I even had a lot of suicidal thoughts our senior year, things like that, because I couldn't deal with that guilt and the nightmares. But I finally started just kind of searching into more of like faith, like, you know, okay, so let's ask some questions. So I read like 300 self-help books in about a 14-month period. I was reading basically a book a day almost. And the more I was reading these books, the more I realized I had a choice. You know, do I choose hate and anger, or do I choose happiness and not allowing this situation to affect my life? And Ricky ruined my innocence. He ruined my family, but I made the decision I was never going to allow him to ruin my life. You know what I mean? I wasn't going to give that control away. So I made the conscious decision to try to make the best choice I could every day to be happy and to not allow this to affect me. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so that's kind of where it all started, and then I just kind of, it took a long time. It took
Yeah.
a very long time to heal. I still struggle sometimes, but you know, I'm one of those people that really push life's a choice. And there's this quote from Charles Swindoll that I love. It's like, the event is like 10%, what happens and how you respond is like 90%.
Yeah.
And that's really true. The event or a tragedy is only 10%, but how you respond and how you react to it's 90%. So if you don't like what you're doing, change it. Do something different, make different decisions. I could have turned to drinking, I could have turned to drugs and all that. And I chose not to. I didn't want to live my life that way. I wanted to be happy. So I made that choice.
And I always say this, I believe the greatest power we have as human beings is the power of choice. And
Absolutely.
and you could have chosen so easily to go the other way.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that people that do are weak or anything like that. It's just I
Right.
get it. I mean, you had something very tragic happen to you and your family. And the other thing that I just marvel at is how you turn that event into serving others. How much has that helped you get through it as well and deal with it as well when you can take what you've learned from this event and now serve others and help others to try to get through difficult situations that they have in their life?
It's been a long time coming. I mean, it's kind of coming, I'm now coming around in a full circle in a way. But it feels good. I'm starting to feel like I'm now kind of understanding why all this happened. Because now I'm discovering, I feel like my path and my purpose and, why I survived that day. Because now speaking and teaching CIT is I'm taking a negative situation and turning it into a positive. And I think I really believe in my heart, Jim and Bruce and Rick and, my mom, dad, and everybody would be very proud of me,
Mhm.
you know, doing that. So it feels good. I'm glad I'm finally seeing the big picture now as to why all this happened.
Yeah, and I have a saying that says when you feel helpless, help others,
Yeah.
and serve others. And I can guarantee you 1000% that your family is hugely proud of what you're doing. I know I am.
Thank you.
And I want to talk a little bit about your book. Why don't you describe your book a little bit and what drove you to write that book? Because that couldn't been easy to rehash that whole thing again and put it down on paper. I'm sure that there was
Right.
some emotional moments doing that, but what kept you going and what kept you writing that book?
Well, first of all, here's my book, Silent Voices.
Get it, people.
And I won 5 awards on it. So I'm
It's
pretty proud of that.
it's unbelievable. I read it in one night.
Oh, thank you.
It's
But
it's
no, go ahead.
it's it will just make you, I can't say enough about it. It makes you think so much and it teaches you so much, but it makes you reflect so much too. And I think that's what a good book does is it makes you reflect on things. And it's gotten 5 awards. It deserves 1,000 awards. It's an
Oh,
amazing
thanks.
book, and I know it's helped a ton. But again, what drove you to drive and push through writing that book?
You know, I'll have to say it was my mom. Um, I started writing the book about 15 years after Jim and Bruce passed. I kind of felt like, God, something good has to come out of something bad. There has to be a lesson here. There has to be a reason. And I was kind of in that momentum. And plus, when I started writing it, I realized it was, very healing. I felt like I was lifting a monkey off my back. But then I stopped because it got to the point, I told my family I was writing it and they supported it, but I could tell they were not ready for it. So I put it away because my mom, they just, you know, they were still healing. They
Yeah,
were still
yeah,
struggling. And so I wanted to respect them. And then about 13 years ago, Ricky had passed away. And after he passed, my mom's like, you know what? I want you to write the book. I want you to get his story out there. I want you to share the struggles that, my parents went through. You know, because she wasn't seeing anything change in society. We were still seeing a lot of the same problems. And so with her push, I brought, you know, all my notes back out. Um, she had tons of notes because we had lawsuits and all that. So I pulled out a box. She had like notes, like you
Hmm.
wouldn't believe. I went through all the notes. I interviewed her. I interviewed my dad, you know, went through everything again. Um, Made sure I got all my facts and everything straight. And so I went ahead and finished the book for my mom.
And
So I did it for her.
what do you want people to get from your book?
I want people, the only reason I did the book was one, I wanted people to understand schizophrenia, but the main reason is I wanted to teach compassion. I want people to understand how hard and how difficult it is to live with somebody who has schizophrenia or any type of mental illness. And, you know, it's not easy. And, you know, getting people to take medication is very difficult. Getting the medical help is very difficult, especially with schizophrenics. You know, there's no halfway houses. There's just not much help. And so I thought if people understood the struggles family went through, then maybe they would have a little bit more compassion towards those families. And I also want people to understand that mental illness, especially schizophrenia, is a brain disease. A lot of people think it's a personality disorder, and it is not. And it makes me so angry when I see people, you know, treat MS and MD and cancer and all these things. People donate and they put a lot of effort to it, but yet everyone ignores mental illness. And it's like still has a negative social stigma because they don't accept it as an illness. And it is an illness. It's a brain illness.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'm hoping people will kind of realize that, you know, and it deserves respect. And so I get frustrated on that, but I'm hoping people learn compassion, if anything.
Well, I love your passion on it because that's what we need, right? We need more
Yeah.
awareness of it. We need to learn more about it, and you know, the compassion too, Deb. I want to go over this a little bit. Um, your relationship with Ricky after the incident. Um, where did that evolve? How did that evolve? And what did that evolve to? I guess is the
Okay.
question.
Yeah.
Um, because the compassion that I think you showed for him was extraordinary. So
Well,
take us through that a little bit.
okay. So after the event happened, I immediately forgave Ricky for the act, because I knew it was the illness that causes tragedy and not him as a soul. Um, I did have to work through forgiveness in the sense of him ruining my childhood, him destroying my family, you know, those type of things. So it took me quite a few years to work through that forgiveness, but I never stopped loving him. No one in my family did. We were there for him. We supported him. We went and visited him all the time. Um, I have to admit, my parents were fantastic. They taught me what unconditional love really meant. My parents visited Ricky the first Saturday of every month for 26 years. They never missed. My mom missed one time and she was doing chemo. She was sick. So my dad went by himself. And they also talked to Ricky on the phone every single week for 26 years. They never turned their back on him. And neither did my siblings. We went and visited him about every 4 weeks. No, I'm sorry, every 4 months. We went down to the state hospital. We go play pool, we play games, we, you know, take a picnic. Sometimes we go walk the grounds of the hospital and have a picnic. And, you know, at first it was difficult because at first he didn't have the freedom. He was in maximum security. And so it was like jail. So, you know, it was over a 26-year period where we got to do more and more activities as he got better and better and better. And he started, the medication started getting a little better. And so it got to the point that, you know, before he passed, you would have never known he was sick. The
Oh, wow.
medications were working great. He had a little part-time job. He would go do off the grounds. You know, he would go watch baseball games and go swimming and all these things. They would let him, or someone would go with him off the grounds to do these things. But he accepted accepted the hospital as his home. He had no desire to leave. But you would never know, just having a conversation, that what he did or how sick he was great at the end. But he was my brother. I loved him, and I wasn't going to turn my back on him, no matter
Amazing.
what.
Yeah, it's an amazing story of forgiveness, of
Yeah,
your unconditional love as well, not just your parents, but
yeah,
your whole family's unconditional love, because you realized it wasn't really him. He was,
yeah,
had the mental illness and so forth.
yeah.
What else do you do now, Deb, to help people have more awareness to this? I know you speak and some other stuff. What else do you do to help people understand what's going on with the mental illness part of this?
So what I do now, is I do crisis intervention training, which is called CIT, and I travel around Colorado. I will give a little kudos to our friend Amir, because I wouldn't have gone down this path without Amir. He introduced me to a gentleman named Jeff Santelli, which is Santelli Training. He's a retired officer, just like Amir. And they go around to different law facilities and do CIT training for law enforcement, sometimes firemen, sometimes paramedics. Every once in a while there might be teachers, security guards, even officers that work in jails, those type of things. And so we go around and do coaching. So I speak on my family's history, and then I also give tips to law enforcement on how to handle families who are struggling with mental illness, because law enforcement was very helpful to my family. Medical field failed us, but law enforcement was always there, and we're always doing things to help us. So I want law enforcement to understand that people appreciate what they do, but I also want to teach them about the difficulties of mental illness in a family. And so I speak, but we also do the coaching part. So we have live actors come in, and we do it's like real
That's awesome.
scenarios of someone trying to commit suicide, a schizophrenic that is going, having hallucinations and voices, and, maybe personality disorder, psychosis, homeless, all these different types of scenarios that officers come up, someone who's drunk and belligerent and angry, abusive, all these types of scenarios, and teach them communication and teach them how to work with it, how to de-escalate a crisis. And so it's been such a joy meeting all these wonderful law enforcement officers who really love society, really want to help, really, really do care, and want to be the best that they could be. And so it's been a lot of fun traveling around the state doing this. But I feel like, I've kind of found my calling in a way, and given them different perspectives, with families who struggle with mental illness.
Yeah, and Amir is amazing too.
Yes, yes.
He was an unbelievable police officer, but the heart that Amir has for people
Yeah.
is amazing. I want to go to your nonprofit. Tell us a little bit about your nonprofit, and how can people get involved with your nonprofit?
Well, unfortunately, I had a nonprofit. My mom really wanted to raise money to build halfway houses, or at least my perspective was, at least if we could raise money to give to families, because sometimes medications are really expensive to give to family, or to pay for counseling and those type of things. But unfortunately, the federal government has now, they're shutting me down, because I guess there's federal rules that you have to get so many donations, a certain amount per year. And unfortunately, that social stigma, people don't want to donate to mental illness. I hate to say it, but they don't. They rather donate to cancer and different things. And so I wasn't getting enough donations. And so this last year, about 5-6 months ago, I was told I had to shut it down.
Because you weren't getting enough donations.
Yeah. So I no longer have a nonprofit,
So is there
which
any?
is really sad. It just proves my point of social
Wow.
stigma. People are afraid of mental illness. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to be associated with it.
So,
And it's just really sad.
sweep it under the rug.
Yeah. And what people don't realize is 1 out of 5 people have mental illness sometime in their life. So if you're standing at a grocery store and you have 4 people next to you, one of you 5 is going to experience mental illness sometime in your life.
Uh,
And so that's why it needs to be taken seriously, and people really need to start treating it with respect and people need to get help. People are embarrassed or afraid and don't want to tell anyone. And it's just really sad as a society that we treat mental illness so negatively.
yeah. So is there a way that people listening to this want to get that thing started back up and make a push for donations? Is there a way that it could start again, or is it done?
It's done, but I highly encourage everyone, if you have a few extra dollars a year, to donate to NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness. Every state has a chapter. Colorado has a pretty good chapter, and they do a lot of really good things. They try to help families. They try to do counseling. They try to help find doctors and medication. They do the best that they can. It's a really good group of people. So I encourage people to donate to NAMI.
Okay. So I want to go into this a little bit, Deb. When you went through this situation, I've had people on my podcast. We've talked about trauma before. Why don't you describe what happened to you after the incident happened and the trauma piece that you've been dealing with?
Okay. So, when Jim and Bruce died, of course, a lot of people have already read my book, but if you haven't read it, I end up being there with Jim. Jim basically died in my arms. And because of this tragedy, I did develop PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and it caused a lot of problems for me. I started having extreme bad nightmares, anxiety problems. For the first year, maybe 2 years, I had to sleep with the light on because I was very afraid. Um, uh, I I had a hard time concentrating, and even my grades in school started to decline because I was having memory problems actually. And so, of course, over the years, I went to counselors, talked to some psychiatrists. And so a lot of people think you can only get PTSD if you're a veteran or law enforcement, which is not true. Anyone could get PTSD that's
Mhm.
gone through some type of traumatic event or some type of trauma. And so it's very important that you make efforts to take care of yourself and to get the help that you need. And so I made those efforts, and I did 2 techniques. One's called EFT, which is tapping. Certain meridians on the body, they found that you tap, you say the negative comment, and then you replace it with a positive comment. And then there's EMDR, which is eye movement type of treatment. And I did both of them, and they actually worked really well. And so it got to the point where I felt like, I was doing great. I'll be honest with you, it was about a 10-year process.
Yeah.
It took me quite a while. I didn't, I had problems. I should say I still have a few problems, but who doesn't? But it took a while to work through it. And so I encourage anyone to maybe try those treatments, talk to counselors, because life's too short. It's not worth living in pain, and life should be happy. It should be beautiful, and it can be. But I will be honest, PTSD never goes away. What I discovered, it kind of goes dormant, and there might be things that will trigger it to bring it back. If I hear music from 1983, it immediately puts me back to feelings to that time. I can still, to this day, I cannot stand people coming up behind me, because Ricky always attacked me from the back. And so I get very upset when it upsets me.
Yeah.
And every
Yeah.
once in a while, things will happen where I might still have a bad dream or things like that. But I developed coping skills, and that's what people have to do, is learn or find out what is their coping skill to help them work through if they have a trigger or if they're struggling with PTSD, what is it that bring you joy? So I hike, I camp, I go jeeping. Being in nature is very healing for me. Listening to music's healing. I do activities that really I thoroughly enjoy. So I encourage people to find their coping skills. What is it they do, or what, will help them feel better? So if they are triggered or going through a hard time, do those things, and it will help you, along with, if you need to talk to someone, a counselor or something too. But mental health and being healthy mentally, emotionally, physically is so important. And so I encourage people to please take care of themselves.
Yeah, we deserve that,
Yeah,
right? I
absolutely.
mean, like you said, life's too short.
Yeah.
And again, you said it in this part of your journey too. You made the choice to go get help for it. I
Yes.
think there's a lot of people out there that deal with some of this stuff that are just afraid to make that choice. They're just
Right.
afraid to go get a counselor or seek help in certain ways, or something like that. What would you tell somebody who's in that position right now? I'm dealing with PTSD, let's say, and I I, I don't know what to do. I'm too afraid to admit it. I'm too afraid to go get help. What would be the one thing that Debbie would tell them?
Oh, it's a hard question, Joe.
I know.
It depends on what my thought process is at the moment. But I wouldn't. I probably would really sit and really talk to them for a while and let them know how worthy they are. People deserve to be
There
happy.
you go. Yeah.
And a lot of people think because they go through a bad situation, they deserved it, or they're not good enough. And that's not true. Um, it, it just, gosh, I am almost lost for words, to be honest with you. It just, I don't know how to express to someone that everybody has the right to be happy. Everyone has the right to live to live life to their fullest. And so you have to take what happened, and I almost feel like you have to almost put it in a box. So you have to kind of understand the value of it. You have to understand, okay, what is it that I can learn from it? Because we can learn from everything that's negative.
Hmm.
Good
Hmm.
experiences and bad experiences, you can learn from both. And so what is it you could learn from it? What is it that you could release? What is it that you could maybe hold on to, for memories, for reminders? But I always feel like bad situations is what makes us stronger. That's how we grow spiritually, and that's how we gain wisdom and knowledge. And so I embrace negativity, or I embrace bad situations, because that's when we learn the most. And that's when we become stronger. And it takes a lot of courage and strength to admit you need help and to go do it. And everybody has that strength inside of them. They just need that encouragement to pull it out. And even give them some guidance on what doctor to go see, or what counselor to talk to. But man, something good could come out of something bad.
Well, you said it was a difficult question,
Yeah,
but the way
I hope I answered it okay.
you answered it unbelievable, Debbie. That was just unbelievable. I say this, that life is, people say life's a marathon.
Yeah.
And I challenge that, and I say it's not really a marathon, it's a steeplechase. A steeplechase is like a long distance race in track. I don't know much about track, but the steeplechase has hurdles in it. One of the hurdles you jump over and you have to jump through water and keep going and keep
Yeah.
running. And realistically, that's what life is. We're going okay, and then all of a sudden something happens and there's a big hurdle we have to get over and keep going. And I always tell people you have a choice. You can use that as an opportunity, or you can look at it as an obligation.
Yeah.
And the opportunity to learn and grow and progress and keep getting better from it is what we want you to choose to do, hopefully.
Yeah.
And what you did with that answer was help people make that choice.
And a lot of times people don't realize it because sometimes they don't see it, but usually there's something positive that comes out of a bad situation.
Hmm.
Like for us, it opened the door to communication about mental illness in the state of Colorado because it was all over the news. That door would have never been open probably maybe years down the road, but to bring the discussion, what's wrong with our system? What's wrong with, the state hospital, these type of things. A lot of people don't know this, not unless we read the book, but in Littleton, so the day that Jim and Bruce died, so you got the Littleton police station here, and you had my parents' house here, and then there was the train tracks. The coal train came in and stopped. So the Littleton police could not get to our house for over 25 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And of course, the SWAT team and the paramedics would not enter the house until the Littleton police got there.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that caused a lot of problems. Actually, it caused my brother's Bruce's death because he was shot in the lungs and he bled to death because they would not enter the house. So because of this situation, Littleton decided to build the bridge. So the bridge going down into it over the train tracks into downtown Littleton was built because Jim and Bruce died, and they never wanted the Littleton cops to be ever stopped again. So that's a beautiful positive that came from this horrible situation. Now lives are being saved because the Littleton police could get there. And so I think that's a beautiful thing. Yes, I want Jim and Bruce back, but yet their deaths saved many lives. So there's these domino effects that could happen, that maybe there might be other things that happen you may not see. Maybe like we had letters. There's people who sent letters from across the nation to my mom because it made national news, saying how that event taught them something or brought awareness about mental illness or something about schizophrenia they didn't know. My parents received letters from people all over Colorado about, it changed their thought process about mental illness when they heard the struggles that my parents went through. So there was a lot of positive that came from it.
And there still is.
Yeah.
What you're doing today, right? And I look at it as you're leaving. Jim and Bruce have left a legacy.
Yeah.
When you talk about that, it gives me goosebumps to think about that, because that's what we yearn to do when we leave this place, is to leave a legacy that people can be inspired by and so forth. And when you talked about how many lives it's probably saved by just building that bridge, it's amazing to think about.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
They didn't die in vain. I'll tell you that.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And it's sad, that this had to happen, but at the same token, a lot of good stuff has come from it.
So a couple more questions. I know we got to get going. I could go on forever with you here, but have you gotten over the question, or do you still find yourself sometimes asking why?
I'm finally getting over that question. Now that I found CIT, now I feel like I've made that complete circle. I feel like I've now gotten my reason. Unfortunately, it took 39 years, I guess, since we graduated high school to finally come to that. Thank God I finally got that answer, but I feel very, very good about the whole situation now and the why.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And you stuck with it, Deb. You stuck with it. How many times during those 39 years could you have said, I'm done?
Oh, quite a few times.
Right? Yeah.
Quite a few times.
It shows you the strength and the strength that you have as a person. You're an amazing person.
Thanks,
3
Joe.
questions to end. You got me so fired up today. I'm ready to go.
We can talk as long as you want, Joe. I don't care.
three questions. I wrote a book. It's called The 3 Ps: Finding Your Purpose, Perspective, and Passion. It was my first attempt, nothing like yours. But
it's a good book.
I enjoyed it. It was fun to do. But I ask everyone on my show about those 3 questions. What's your purpose in life?
I just think my purpose in life is really just to teach compassion for families who struggle with mental illness. Let them know that the problems are real, and every family really does have difficulties. It's not easy. And so, I hope that people will at least start looking at mental illness more as an illness and not a personality disorder or some negative social stigma,
Yeah.
you know.
And you're doing that.
Yeah.
The second one, I skip over perspective. I'll come back to that. What's your passion in life? You mentioned going to the mountains and that kind of stuff, but what's your passion in life?
You know, the the CIT is really starting to become my passion, because not only do I speak and coach, but I also help administratively. So I'm helping, figure out the scenarios, who does what scenarios, what actor goes with what person, what do each of these people need to learn. So I'm really enjoying that aspect of it. I'm hoping to eventually take it nationally and maybe speak nationally and travel nationally to all law enforcement agencies. Because if I could teach that one cop a little bit of compassion, taking their time to communicate with a schizophrenic, understanding they have to speak slowly, say simple sentences, because a schizophrenic's hearing voices and delusions and all these things at one time, and a cop's trying to direct them or tell them what to do. It's just too much stimulation for them. So trying to teach a cop to slow it down and really be able to communicate with them. If I could help that and help them understand the difficulties families go through, it's all worth it.
Yeah. And I always say this, that your purpose and your passion equal each other.
Yeah.
And you just prove that, because your purpose and your passion are basically all wrapped around serving someone else,
Yeah.
helping someone else, which again is why you are who you are. But what holds that together is your perspective. When we have a perspective on life, it kind of holds our purpose and passion together. So what would you say your perspective on life is?
Overall, I think I'm not sure if I'm going to be answering this correctly, but I think overall I try to stay and keep a very positive perspective on life. I want to enjoy every moment, because I've learned very early that,
Mhm, mhm,
life could end at any moment or
mhm.
at any time. And so I want to do things that bring enjoyment, with being with my family and friends, and, even having my alone time and
Yeah.
having time to be in the mountains to find my peace.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I guess my perspectives is like, you got to enjoy life. You got to appreciate everything that happens, good or bad, and take what you learn. And then hopefully someday, if someone asks for my advice or opinion, I could share my wisdom with them and maybe help them along their way. But my perspectives, if that's answering your question, I'm just trying
Yeah.
to stay
No,
positive, man.
no, that's perfect, because that's what holds your purpose and your passion together.
Yeah.
Just think, I talk to people about it all the time. They have their passion and their purpose, and then an event happens in their life. So when that event happened in your life, it probably really skewed your perspective on life for a little while.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
it probably took you out of your purpose and your passion a little bit, because
Yeah.
this thing happened and it was horrific at the time. And you've turned it into something that's now a beautiful thing to help others and serve others. But when bad things happen, what I try to tell people is, don't let that change your perspective, because if it does, it's going to take you out of your purpose and passion. So hang in there,
Absolutely.
hang in there, hang in
Yeah.
there. And
It takes a lot of strength and courage to stand and live in light, to be honest with
yeah,
you.
yeah,
Um, and you have to, no matter how difficult life can be, because life is hard, but you know what? If you believe in yourself and you believe that you could, accomplish anything or deserve good, um, you could find ways to work through it.
okay. I lied. I have one more question for you. How much did your faith play in all this, Deb?
A lot. And, I have to thank my parents for that, being brought up as a Catholic, but they really pushed us to have strong faith. And I think it's the faith that pulled me through, because I can't imagine not saying, oh God, please help me. I can't even imagine not having those words in my life.
Mhm.
But I kept I knew it deep in my heart. There was a reason why this happened. I didn't understand the reason, but as long as I kept my faith, it kept it in a more positive, I guess, perspective or point of view.
Hmm.
Because they always say that saying that, God only gives you things that he thinks you can handle or whatever. And I believe in that. But I also believe there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Even I know that's a cliche, but it's true if you're willing to look for the light.
Hmm.
You have to go out there. You have to find that light. And I think faith helps you find that light and helps you find that positivity and help you to better yourself and to heal yourself when you're struggling. So faith has been everything for me. I mean, it's basically my foundation.
Pretty amazing. And
Yeah.
the ironic thing about this is, and it just made me think about this, Debbie and I have the same birthday.
Yes, we
So,
do.
so we were born on the same day, and there's chances we probably might have been baptized on the same day
Probably so.
at
And I think where we
St.
what
Mary's.
hospital were you at? Were you at the
I
state
think
hospital?
I might have been I can't remember. Which one were you?
I think I was at Porter's.
I think I
Where were
was at
you?
St. Joe's, I think.
Oh, okay.
We were born in Denver, but we were probably baptized. Were you baptized at St. Mary's?
Yes.
Yeah. So we might have been even baptized on the same day. Um, so
We're soul friends.
yeah. I want to thank you. I know sometimes it's not easy going through that story again. And I know you've been through that story a lot. But what you did for people today is give them a purpose and let them know that they have a purpose in life, and they can make that choice um, to go for it, to go get the help if they need it, or help somebody who needs it, or have compassion for somebody who needs it, or families who need it. And you really opened a lot of eyes today, and
I
you're
I just
amazing.
hope people don't ever feel like they're alone,
Right.
because there's somebody out there that has gone through similar
Hmm.
situations that could guide or help you. You just have to learn to reach out and ask for help if anyone's out there struggling.
How
But I
can Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you, how can people get a hold of you if they want you to come speak to their organization or something like that? How can people get a hold of you or get your book?
Uh, they could email me. The book's on Amazon. They could email me at silent dash voices at comcast.net. So
And show your book one more time.
this is my book.
You got to get it. You
Yep.
got to get it.
And Joe, I want to add one small thing here is I also want to say a special thank you to you, because after that happened, you were a very good friend to me, you and Scott and Brian, and
Yeah.
you guys were always, taking care of me, taking me out, spending weekends with me. I mean, you guys were a great support system. I feel very blessed to have you guys as friends. And man, you helped me through a lot, through a really, really bad time. So
Well, that
thank
means a
you.
lot. I didn't know really as much as I do now about what you were going through. I wish I
Yeah.
would have known more then about everything, but the empathy that I had for you, um, I didn't feel like I did enough, to be honest with you. But
You did.
um,
You did.
what you've,
Everyone did a good job. And you got to look at our ages,
yeah,
17, we and 18, we're
but
immature a little.
what's amazing to me, again, Debbie, and again, I know I keep saying this, but it just is amazing to me how you've turned this into helping so many people. And
Thank you.
it's a credit to the person you are. It's a credit to your faith. It's a credit to your awesome husband, Charlie, who's an amazing guy as well. So blessed to have him come into your life. I know he's a blessing for you as well,
Yes.
and all your friends and so forth. But thank you so much for coming on. You changed a lot of lives today, and I appreciate that. I think it's hard to motivate people, but I think it's easy to inspire people to motivate themselves.
Yeah.
And I think what you did today was inspire people so they can get motivated to go get the help they need, or have compassion for the people they need to have compassion for, in some of those things. So I just truly appreciate you coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. It's been fun to talk to you.
It's
We
been
need to
awesome.
get together for dinner or lunch
Yeah,
soon.
we got to. And I want to thank you guys for listening to this week's powerful edition of the People Progressing podcast. You can get a hold of me through coachjoewhite97@gmail.com. And we wish you to have a great week and keep progressing. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Bye, everyone.